Welcome back. I recently got a chance to see some new research happening out in the field. Here's more. What are you guys doing out here? You got a little different project, and tell me why you're doing this.
We want to do some of the practices that we talk about, and we wanted to actually farm ourselves, put ourselves in the farmer's spot, in their position.
Stephanie, in particular, we've got kind of an intercropping system set up here. Explain what the rationale is there.
The whole purpose of this block is to do 8 rows of corn and then 8 rows of beans, 8 rows of corn, 8 rows of beans. And the purpose of that is to accumulate as much sunlight as possible. So some different things that we're doing out here is for the corn, there's 8 rows. The inner 2 rows are going to be 26,000 population. Then the next 2 rows are going to be 32,000. The next 2 rows are going to be 36, and the outer rows are going to be 40,000 to help harvest as much sunlight as possible.
What we're also looking at with that is when you have the soybeans in between the corn, we're looking at shading effects. How's that going to affect yield? Can we get just as good of a yield with beans, and return on investment also?
You've got kind of several different blocks essentially out here where you're doing different things, whether it's population counts or row spacing or different things, just to kind of crunch the numbers. And I'm sure you're excited for harvest, just to kind of see how did you do in some of those ways.
Yeah, so my particular role with the Rower Co-op is to take all the information that we've gathered and put it into ways that we can present to growers and help them understand what we're doing. So taking all these nitty-gritty numbers and putting it into a visual project so everyone else can see.
And Danielle, I'm sure some of this you're just trying to pump yield up as high as you can get it, but some of it is kind of more just on the what's an actual farmer out there doing who's maybe a little more concerned about return on investment. I mean, you're kind of across the whole spectrum there, aren't you?
Yep, that's exactly right. We have a block where we just kind of did normal average farmer practices, and we wanted to do that just to kind of have something to compare it to. Then we do have a block out here that's about 12 acres where we're pushing high fertility. We do have 2 hybrids in there and 3 different populations to spread our risk. We did deep samples there this year and found out some very interesting things. We want to know what's down 48 inches in our soil because our roots go down to 48 inches.
And not just kind of that top 8 inches, but really take advantage of that whole.
Yep, whole profile. We want to utilize that because our roots are there. So we are excited about harvest. We want to know what we have out here, so we're just in anticipation right now. But there's a lot of cool things going on out here. A lot of learning.
Let's maybe talk about that row spacing one. I think that's one that has some interest because people are, curious about things like the canopy and what's that going to do in terms of weed suppression and some of those things. I mean, have you seen some differences?
Yeah, so we have 2 blocks on one end of the field on soybeans. They dig canopy at different times of the year.
We had the 15-inch canopied around that June 26th time frame, and the 30-inch was around that July 10th, 12th time frame.
So, I mean, that's about a 2-week difference there.
Yep, it is. And we really wanted to, we have growers that do 15-inch soybeans and 30s. And so we wanted to be able to showcase both out here. We're seeing differences throughout the growing season, on weed control, but also on what does that plant have to do to get sunlight.
Sure.
We're learning that sunlight is a major role. And we knew that with beans, but what we're seeing is it shortens up nodes on beans. How do we get more pods? How do we fill those pods? That's the million-dollar question right now. We're getting the pods, but how do you fill them? And we're seeing that really comes back to fertility.
I'm going to put both of you on the spot. I want to ask you, what's something that you've noticed out here in observation that you're like, that's really cool, and I can't wit to learn more about that one?
Just yesterday, we pulled a soybean plant, and it had how many nodes on it?
432 pods. And how many beans were in there, Stephanie?
Oh my gosh, there were 1,174 actual beans on that plant. If you multiply that at just 40,000 plants per acre, that is over 200 bushel beans.
That's really cool. Do you have one to add on to that?
Yeah, so also in our corn and our high fertility, we have 2 hybrids out there. One of the hybrids, and what we're seeing out there, yesterday I was out there taking tissue samples, and I did a count of 25 plants. 13 out of those 25 plants had suckers or tillers. Okay. And they had 3 years on those plants. 2 years on the tillers and 1 on the main stalk. And so that right there to me is like what's going on right here. What we're trying is working. Corn plant has a potential to put a year on every node. So how do we get it to do that?
All right, well, thank you both for sharing some great information with us.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Weather's up next, and we've got more from the State Fair as Grow continues.